welcome to Superangel Insights. I'm really happy to be here today with Sarah Brown. Um, Great to have you here, Sarah.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
And with Sarah, we're going to talk about how to set goals, sales goals for B2B SaaS marketing. And just as an introduction, uh, based on Sarah's LinkedIn, that she has been doing different marketing, hands-on marketing for 21 years. She has been consulting over 9+ years, different startups and companies on marketing, and she has been mentor for Techstars and Backstage Capital. And what I haven't written here, that in Techstars she was elected as All-Star Mentor this year in February. And Sarah has also written a book, which is in among top 25 in startup category, about how to work in a startup as an employee. Um, and did I miss anything? I know you have a long list of our achievements in your on your belt. Did I miss anything important, Sarah?
That sounded great. I'd love for you to introduce me at everything I ever speak at. That was perfect. Yeah.
Thank you. And as always, I collected also from people who signed up for this event questions they want to get answered the most. They start from how to test different markets before you start to do marketing. How do you know that you are tackling the right market in geography-wise or industry-wise? When you decide to start to do marketing in B2B SaaS, where should you start? How what should you have before it's worth starting to do marketing? What metrics should you use in early stage? And what are the main challenges, what Sarah has seen, and how to overcome those, and what tools have you used and recommend to others. So let's have it as a like a background knowledge. And I wanted to actually start with you, Sarah. How do you define marketing yourself? Like there's like growth hacking, and is there like a LinkedIn inside marketing, or it's a sales, or like how do you understand B2B SaaS marketing, what it is and what it's not?
Great question. First of all, hi everyone. So excited to be here and learn more about the companies that are in this portfolio, and just big fan of what you're doing here. So I know that it takes so much energy to build a startup, and every event you go to is a trade-off to not do something else on your business. So hopefully we can provide some value for everyone here. The way that I think about B2B SaaS marketing is you exist, or we exist, to drive revenue. And I think early stage, sometimes that revenue goal can actually mean that you really just want to build your audience and your network. And revenue is something that you're shooting for maybe after your seed round or series A. But I think thinking long term, why marketing exists, it's to build your pipeline for sales to close. And so I say this knowing when you are early stage, sometimes it's the same person doing marketing and sales, or even just you as a founder. But thinking about it as a function will help you as you're scaling, because you will eventually hire specialists who will come in and execute, even if it's you right now. So with that context, that it exists for sales, it exists for driving the KPIs that will lead to sales, even if it's not sales today. There's so many tactics and channels, and we can talk about that today, but it's really important to focus on, I think, what your customers and what your market requires, and not get distracted by all of the tactics. And something I see a lot of founders do at Techstars, and we talk about it quite frequently is getting really excited about the new shiny thing and not focusing on what's going to drive revenue and drive the KPIs that will help you grow your business, help you fundraise, or develop your current customers to become larger accounts.
Recently, I just finished Lost and Founder book by Rand Fishkin, who is also a mentor at Backstage VC. By the way, highly recommend that book. And he is like a SEO guru. And he also says that based on his experience in building MOS and these growth hacks, it's not long term, that they dilute you from doing the real thing, that you actually should be building is a flywheel, that it's hard to get it going, but in order to maintain the speed of it or increase it, you have to just add small bursts of energy later on. Getting going is energy, consuming lots of energy, and like understanding that what you should do in order to build this flywheel of marketing, that you have this engagement and spread in the right channels and with the right message, and that his basic message is also that the spikes and the hacks, nobody has built a great company using like hacks for like constantly coming up with hacks and doing the hack way. That it's and in his experience also, this one hack they did and which had a huge spike. The problem was that it generated them thousands of customers who churned very fast, and it messed up totally their KPIs, and no investor wanted to touch them because of this spike, which brought in like 5,000 customers who churned over like very rapidly over 2 years and messed up their churn numbers. So that
yeah, well, I love what you said, and I want to dig into a couple of things. First of all, yes, Rand Fishkin is an awesome resource. His book is great. And one thing I like that he really focuses on is ICP, your ideal customer profile. And so what you're getting at and what you're alluding to is they had deviated from their ICP without realizing it by hacking and focusing on who your ideal customer is, what their needs are, and even within an enterprise account, what we call above the line buyers. So these are the business buyers, the high level folks who are thinking strategically for their organization. And then the below the line buyer, which is very technical, which needs to know all of the features, all of the sort of product marketing specs that compare to other market options, or even if you're comparing to Excel, how you stack against them. And then I think with Rand, he knew customer education and prospect education was crucial. So he did something called Whiteboard Fridays, which I think is one of the leading examples of how to educate in a very relatable way, and something every founder here could learn from, which is understanding a knowledge gap between what you offer and what you know your solution provides and what the market requires. And I think they don't necessarily know, crossing that chasm, that it's a gap that they can fill with your solution. So what he would do is he would just, I don't know if anyone knows him, he's got like a great facial hair look, and he's very cool. So he would just get in front of a whiteboard and educate people. And he started building that flywheel, that audience, by investing in teaching people. So I would say a great tactic, which is not a hack, is across any channel where you know your customers are, or you are, I'd say, hypothesizing they are, start to build resources that teach them about not just your product and solution, but how to think strategically in the category that you're disrupting. So
just one admin thing I forgot to say. If any of you have questions, type it into chat and I will follow the chat. So I will stop Sarah and ask the questions. And later on we might do the open mic also. So you mentioned this, I think it is crucial, and it comes to the questions we also had from the audience, that how to identify this ideal customer. That before I can start the marketing, I kind of have to know, or I should have some hypothesis or some guesses about who's my ideal customer. And so what's your like best advice on how to in B2B market, where in
Sure.
enterprise sales or like SMB sales, how to find it?
Sure. I'm going to give two answers. The first is I lead marketing at a company called Intricately, which is a data company that serves Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Oracle, really large cloud companies, by helping them use cloud data and cloud footprint traffic data to understand their ideal customer profiles. So that's, I think about that a lot in the enterprise, as well as identifying their TAM. There's a lot of important things once you're at that level of maturity where you've tested a lot of markets, you've made assumptions, but when you think about Amazon or Oracle or any of these large cloud companies, these enterprises, they have multiple segments and multiple teams attacking these segments, but they need to know where to prioritize. So for instance, AWS, they're giving a lot of cloud credits. You might have some with your portfolio, I imagine. You're right, I'm sure they've identified you. So they're investing in you because they think you're going to grow. And they've seen, okay, you're a high potential, your high propensity to grow and become a valuable unicorn that is worth scaling on our platform. So if we can get you early, right? But I think for startups, this is my second piece, you're early, you're still really identifying your ICP. So I'm going to give an answer that's something we talk about in Techstars. It's almost a hack, which is find out who has the budget and test that, because I was mentoring an HR tech company and they were selling to diversity and inclusion departments, but finding that it was the recruitment departments that had the budget. And so as they wanted to grow their ASP from 10,000 US dollars per year to $100,000 per year, they had to go to the team within the enterprise that had the budget. Now, they still built up some really important resources to get the diversity and inclusion people to refer. But if you're just selling to one group that doesn't have the resources, that can really handicap you. So I would encourage folks to find out who has the budget, find out who the influencers are. And then as you're, I'd say, selling and testing, see if you're able to deliver customer success to who you think your ICP is. Because if you're bringing in the wrong fit for your solution, they're going to churn. And so if you're looking at customer lifetime value, and this is, again, the point of marketing in SaaS, to get back to the original question, what is B2B SaaS? It's the whole life cycle. It's prior to the sale. It's building that pipeline. It's during the sales process, educating, nurturing, accelerating, and then after the sales process, delivering an ongoing positive experience so that we can grow those accounts.
So let's say I have found this, let's say, HR managers in certain type of manufacturing companies are my target. How do I decide that which geographies or locations I should go for? Because like if we tackle like Europe, I can't go to every country. I have to focus, and it's also, even though I can sell partially online, it's still references in some regional location that if my neighbor is using, I have FOMO, fear of missing out. And if you have like somebody in north of the country using your stuff and somebody in the south, it doesn't work. That it has to be like kind of targeted, that the HR people in one region know about you and talk about you and so forth. So how do I test different markets? What's your advice on it?
Yes. So I will answer the tactics of what platforms, how to use Facebook, LinkedIn. But I think the spirit of the question is something that I want to underscore and star and underline, which is that beachhead segment that Jeffrey Moore talks about in Crossing the Chasm, which is a great book for those trying to understand markets, written almost 30 years ago, but still very relevant. Is understanding that group, that initial group of traction, so that then you can grow that and have all the fun challenges AWS has one day. You'll get there. But I think what you're saying is, how do I understand what success looks like within a market? So taking a step back, I love to talk about goals, and all marketing should serve the purpose of testing and growing against goals. So whatever channel it is, whether it's Facebook running ads to, let's say, companies that are in your space in different regions, EMEA, APAC, North America, you can run those experiments, but you have to know what success means, and it's different for every business. And so in the manufacturing company example, and I know there's a real portfolio company potentially even on here that's in that space, understanding what a successful test would look like is it, hey, if we can get 5 customers in this region of this type, we can prove that this is something that we can scale because we know the total addressable market is this big. And so I think working backwards from your TAM, okay, here are the total addressable markets. And then within that, what are the sub markets that you're going to go after? And then which one is going to be the quickest path to whatever your revenue goals are, your acquisition goals. And then as you're fundraising, being able to tell that story to investors is really important. So I mentored a company in the water analytics space. They created a credit score for water, really powerful company. And their platform originally created this credit score for the water business by going after banks that were lending money to farmers. But they realized that there was a much larger TAM outside of just that particular agriculture in California in the United States. And so in looking at expanding to Oregon, to Washington, and then to North America, they were able to tell that TAM story by showing the success they had in California. But if they hadn't built that, if they had just gotten one customer in California, one in Oregon, one in Washington, and by the way, created a platform that wasn't fully addressing all of those needs, it wouldn't have been as compelling. So I love that idea of focus on a region, know what that test should be, and you'll only know what that is for your business. And then as you're telling to investors or as you're getting other customer groups on board, you can tell that story knowing you had that success in your rearview mirror. And I think it's actually, it's kind of funny. I think there can be a vanity of wanting to get into every market at once. Like, oh, I want to see if we can get, Australia to be our, largest customer base, while also going after, Hong Kong or whatever it is. And I think that can be a real distraction for your team because then you have more support hours you have to do across different time zones, and you have to understand the needs of other segments. So give yourselves that opportunity to really win in a market and test a different market before you grow. That would be my advice.
How to decide, like, should I go to Australia or Hong Kong? That way, on statistical terms, TAM is kind of equal, or like big enough on both cases, like huge enough in both cases, that the total size of a TAM doesn't help me. That whichever market I could get, I would be like extremely happy. But
so my advice would be to focus on your strengths as a founder. If you have connections in Germany, go after Germany. If you have, customers who will refer you to their network in a certain region or a certain segment of the market, go use that. I mean, we don't get points for doing it the right way. We get points for doing it the way that works, right?
That's a good one.
Yeah, and I think, if you really, so I'll just talk about the cloud since I think about the cloud all day. We had a lot of early success in the content delivery network space, the CDN space, edge computing. And so our founder had worked at Akamai, which is a well-known CDN provider. So he had tons of connections in the CDN space. People who were at Akamai then went to Fastly, which we all know sort of broke the internet a couple of weeks ago. They got it back. Good lesson in how to apologize. But Cloudflare and Limelight, all of his ex-colleagues who were in that space had moved on. So all of those companies are our customers. And I think his ability to build that traction, we could have gone after cloud security first. And by the way, we do have cloud security customers now, but the CDN wins were I don't want to say easy because every sale took a lot of sweat and tears, but that was where we focused originally. And it was because of the founder background. So if you have those relationships, I would leverage those.
Cool. That's awesome advice. I like this. We don't get points for doing it right. We get points for doing what works. So, okay, let's say that I've decided that it's Germany, that I have some contacts, some edge there, and I understood that what this successful test look like. Problem I see sometimes is that in enterprises, if you install something more complex that the people have to learn, then the time to value is quite long. That it's not like I onboarded a customer in 2 weeks they see value and they are raving, yeah, finally, best thing ever after sliced bread. That it might take them like 6 months before they see any value, or like they might be nice. It might be a nice tool to use. It's kind of makes life easier, but the real value comes after like 3 months or 5 months or 6 months. So do you have any particular suggestions in this case,
Mhm.
how to set these pilots up and how to measure the success of it and build like a momentum?
That's excellent. That's excellent. So I love this question because again, it gets at the life cycle of B2B SaaS, right? You're not transactional, you're constant, ongoing over time. And some of the companies on here might be a credit card swipe where it's, $1,000 a month, or you're selling seats. But for enterprise, in particular, in those higher ASPs, those sales prices per year, you need to really tell that value over time, and it has to continue to grow. It's it can't be just one time to value. It's multiple times to value. So what I like to do and how I like to think about it is think about your most successful customers, the ones who maybe have been early adopters. They've been with you for a year. You've maybe invested in them and done interviews with them and built them over time, and figure out what that case study is. And this is advice I would give to everyone on this call. Create one case study, if you don't have it, with your best customer. Take them out to dinner, say thank you, give them a little deal, whatever it is, to say, hey, I value this relationship too, and let them speak on your behalf. Create a written case study, hire someone on Upwork or online to help you write it. Make sure there are metrics at the top, right? Like those KPIs that you move the needle for this customer. We grew their pipeline by 150%, or we reduced the hours that the sales team was spending prospecting every week. Whatever those KPIs are, we increased efficiency of the manufacturing process by X%. Like, get those numbers up. And then when you're onboarding new customers or doing marketing to your prospects, you want to constantly tell that ROI story.
Mm-hmm.
And I think whether or not you're able to deliver it to your customers day 1, day 30, day 60, that's your North Star. And I think having that in your mind and with your customers, then you can then grow more references, and ROI might be different. You might have a certain value you provide to some of your customers, and then other customers with different services that they're buying from you would get other ROI. But having a really clear menu of what return you're delivering and telling that story, I think, is a really great thing to shoot for.
Awesome. So I have a story. I've decided I go to Germany. And then you said that look at the guys who have a budget. And in fintech, when you're selling to banks or like neobanks or some insurance tech or whatnot, it's not so clear cut. Like some guys have budgets, but influence decision maker. Like if you're selling some kind of tool for them to do some kind of AML or KYC or whatever security checking or background checking you have to do nowadays for anti-money laundering and so forth, that you're selling a tool, and then it's very difficult to decide that who is, they might not have a kind of budget that so far they did it on their own, or they are using some tool, but the decision maker, like is it like a CEO or actually like somebody who is responsible for compliance? Or is it like an actual guy of a department whose employees are using it? So that sometimes it's confusing. That what's your suggestion how to figure it out? That who is the actual decision maker and to whom should I like target the sales? That the budget might not be always the easiest answer.
I love this. So I think you're getting at a really good point, which is before you spend a single marketing dollar, you need to do customer interviews. You need to talk to your market. You need to ask these questions. And I think there's something that we talk about in BDR or SDR in marketing, where this can live in marketing, it can live in sales. It currently lives on my team, so I think about it a lot currently, which is we have an acronym called RANT, which is role, authority, needs, and timing. So every time we have a lead come in, inbound in particular, we go through, is this the role that can buy? Do they have the authority? Is this the need that they have, where my product and solution is a real pain point? It's not a nice to have, it's a have to have. And then is the timing right? What's their sales cycle? And this is something I want to underscore for selling to enterprise. They have a buying cycle where maybe their budget unlocks in the third quarter of the year. And so you need to prepare everything in marketing and all of your go-to-market around when they buy. It's not when you want to sell to them, it's when they're ready to buy, when their budget unlocks. For us, we're very seasonal, where the fourth quarter of the year for go-to-market teams at Google, Amazon, Microsoft, their budget unlocks in the fourth quarter, and they lose it if they don't spend it. And then the next calendar year starts. So that's a very short window. I mean, we did, I'd say, the bulk of our sales in the last 2 weeks of the calendar year. It was wild, but we prepare for a really strong back half of the year in the first half of the year and build our opportunities and our leads. My point is, you can't do any of that qualification. You can't hire someone to go through that checklist if you don't know it yourself. So unfortunately, there's no hack, there's no replacement to doing those customer interviews, doing those prospect interviews, and finding out who is going to have the budget. Is it a few people who work together to make this decision? And what are their needs and timing? And then once you have that, you can build a process around it. But unfortunately, you can't build a process until you've sort of figured that out on your own.
Okay, so we done our homework. Now we know who's the ideal customer. We know we want to go to Germany because we have some contacts there.
Sure.
Now, how do I set, like you said, that the marketing is in service of sales? How do I, I want to go to Germany. I kind of have an idea that based on my current experience, like in Estonia, I can sell this stuff in like 6 months is a sales cycle. How do I set the sales goals for a German market, and how do I build up like the marketing activities and actions to serve the sales goals in Germany? Because like I guess a lot of stuff.
Yes, I love it. I love it. So this is a really fun question, and I love to talk about it. And it's really, I'm going to use some numbers that are really napkin math, but it's how to think about this for your business. So let's say you've, like you said, done your research, figured out what your annual contract value is. Let's say you're selling for 20,000 euros a year. You know who's going to buy, and you know that you want to go after, let's say, Germany, and sell to that particular ICP within that market. The way that I like to think about it in a revenue org is working backwards from your ARR goals. So there's a few different numbers I'm going to talk about here, and the conversion rates. We actually talked about conversion rates prior to jumping in around attendance for this event. So now we're going to talk about conversion rates for your pipeline. So think about it this way. You're trying to get to, let's say, 10 million in ARR at the end of the year. Let's say you're at 5 million in ARR, and you know your ASP is 20,000 euros a year. So figuring out, okay, how many customers is that? And then obviously you will grow those accounts over time, but you also want to build in some churn, right? You've got a certain percentage that even if you did everything perfectly, which you won't, that's okay. But you're doing everything right, they will still move on for whatever reason. Maybe your stakeholder moves to another company, or their budget changes, or they get acquired, whatever. So you build in that churn. You can sort of guess and do industry research for your industry, what churn can look like. But then if you think about it, okay, 20,000 a year, how many customers is that? And then if you can add on services and you sort of expand those accounts, let's say you do 500,000 in expansions, right? So you've got the acquisition funnel, but you also got the expansion funnel. These are all hypotheticals. You'll have to do your own math. But then if you think about it this way, you can look at your funnel and say, okay, for every 100 companies I talk to, we're able to sell to 5, right? Or whatever it is. And then working backwards, okay, then how many companies do I need to talk to? Right. So if you land on, I need to talk to 1,000 companies to sell to this many, then you can set marketing goals around that. And so if a conversation is, let's say, top of funnel, and we could have a whole conversation about lead scoring and when does a lead become an opportunity? We won't get into the details, but let's say at the different stages of your marketing funnel, let's say you have a top of funnel, hasn't heard about us, they're just starting to understand, all the way through to a hand-raising activity of, hey, I'd like to know your pricing. I'd like to know maybe what this could really look like, and all the steps to get there. And then post-sale, what the steps are to expand them. You can look at the conversion rates at each point, and it sounds complicated, but it's actually not that hard of math. Put in your actual numbers and then work backwards and say, okay, I know that if I want to get to 10 million, I need to realistically close this many new customers, which means this many new leads, and therefore I should absolutely spend as much money as possible to acquire those in order to get there within my customer acquisition cost that's reasonable, to not sink my company by having a ridiculous burn rate. So I made it sound very simple, maybe. I know it's very hard in practice, but that's the way we like to think about it as a revenue org. And it's how marketing then can be in service to this ARR target, which will, let's say, help you fundraise or move to your next stage of growth.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I like this that you look at also at the marketing funnel, at how many guys you need who know nothing about you, and how many of those might convert step by step to the guys who ask that, okay, what's the price? At applying the same logic to the sales as like the same logic to marketing as with like the sales funnel is assuming that you know your ideal customer, but otherwise at the end of the day, after the sale, they are going to churn and you can't sell anything to them, and it's going to mess up your SaaS business very fast. So, okay, now we have our targets. How do I get it to OKRs? Okay, it's nice that I have this. Where does the echo come from? Strange. And so I have my targets. Now the question is that I need these, let's say, 5,000 customers or leads in order to convert them to, let's say, these 1,000 potential guys, or like I have to attract 5,000 in order to have 1,000 meaningful leads I can work with. And where should I start, or how to get the OKRs or actions to move towards that goal?
Sure. So this is going to depend on your stage. If you're a mature business, you'll create OKRs in each functional group that all roll up to the high-level business OKRs.
But let's say
let's start with assuming you have.
I'm like early stage. I have like 20 people. I have. I'm lucky enough that I'm big enough that I have one guy who is doing marketing, and I have like sales, free sales guys, and.
Great.
So
sure.
What now?
So starting with your KPI, whether it's revenue or audience growth, and I think it's important to clarify, there are some businesses where, particularly B2C, where growing that network is really valuable versus monetizing it right away. So I want to make a note of that. And I've worked for a construction tech company where we were building that flywheel, where we knew that if we could get general contractors on board, then we could get all of their subcontractors on board because they had to work with them with our platform. And so that model was, we weren't making the subcontractors pay because we knew that once we got the general contractors successful, that flywheel would make the subcontractors join. So I just want to earmark that. Sometimes it's not an ARR goal right away. But whatever that goal is as your North Star, then I would work backwards for your department OKRs. So for sales, maybe your OKR is close this much ARR. And then for marketing, the way I like to think about OKRs is, what are the metrics that are aggressive yet doable? And part of goal setting is, I think, motivating your team. And this is something we don't talk about enough, where if you set goals that are realistic but not aspirational, it can sometimes, people won't go past them. But if you set the goal just a bit beyond where you think you can land, you'd be surprised. Sometimes you hit it, sometimes you go past it. And I think it motivates your team to see this is where we're shooting for. We're not trying to just be a sort of slow growth company. We're trying to become a unicorn. We're trying to grow exponentially. And investors love to see that too. So there's a story that I think you're telling your team with goal setting. So within that, let's say you're shooting for a certain ARR target or audience or network size, working backwards in marketing. I think the most advanced metric you can get to in marketing is the one to emphasize with your team. So for instance, for our business, I have a pipeline goal, which is X million in ARR per quarter or per half of the year. And that pipeline goal, a percentage of that, then sales is aiming to close for their OKR. And so I directly map my pipeline goal. And we know that we're not going to close 100% of the pipeline that marketing brings in, but we know the conversion rates for our industry, we know historically. So I think you build those together as a revenue org and customer success as well with expansions. And again, for us, we've gotten to pipeline. I'd say in your business, if you can't get there yet, where you can't reliably say, maybe you're not sure what your ASP is, or you're still figuring it out, opportunities are a great North Star to set KPIs around. So generating 30 new opportunities this quarter because we believe we'll close, 25% of those. Mm-hmm. And so that's how I would do it. And again, setting it in a way that your team gets excited and maybe feels a little nervous, but you want to motivate them as your goal setting.
Awesome. Now we are into selecting a channel. And, I see two types of startups that some guys who sell something, the companies are already Googling. And then there are some guys like Rand Fishkin has this new Spark Toro solution, which helps you to figure out where your customers are. But for his own product, he can't do any SEO or Google advertising because nobody's searching for that term, what he's doing. So in B2B, I see it quite often that customers are not searching. They would need it, but they don't believe that there is a solution out there, or it's worth trying to find one, and or they are not used to. So how do I select the right channel? But if I Googling, I see that there are keywords. There's kind of obvious way how I can do the SEO and Google advertisement and that part. But what if they are not? What tools have I left in the marketing toolbox to get to those customers?
Perfect question. Love it. So a couple of things. First, what you're getting at is intent. So someone has high intent if they are searching on Google. And my company, we absolutely run ads on Google because people are looking for our data. They don't necessarily know that it exists, but they know that they need to buy data. So that's one piece. But for Rand, again, talking about him, what you're talking about is category creation, where you're creating a category within a market that exists, but you're not working within an established business model where people are comparing you apples to oranges. There's advantages to that because your direct competition isn't necessarily just going to be a ranking of features that you have to be slightly better. But with that being said, there's a great book that my friend Anthony Kennedy wrote called Category Creation. Highly recommend it. If you are going after a category where people might not be having high intent searches for you, you have to invest in building your market, your audience with education. So that's something Rand did with SEO. I mean, with his past business with Moz. And Gainsight is a great example. Anthony was customer success, chief marketing officer at Gainsight, and built the customer success category by educating people, creating a conference, creating a movement. So in some ways, actually, my company is a good example because people are buying intent data, they're buying firmographic data, company size, all of that. They're buying email addresses. But they don't necessarily know that cloud spend exists, where you can see how much people are spending on their cloud products and services. So what we've done is we've educated our market of chief marketing officers and sales ops leaders and taught them, hey, there's this other kind of data that you need to use within your workflow. So I would say find out what your target market's challenges are, and clearly you're solving a challenge. But if not, then maybe take a step back. But if you've proven that there is a market, and then talk about what they already know. Like, look, you're trying to increase efficiency in your operations and you're using Excel. You might not be searching for Excel replacement, but you can talk about the challenges they're facing with their business and their KPIs, and then how your solution will fit in. So in terms of actual practical channels, I think LinkedIn is a great one for doing posts, doing video on LinkedIn. YouTube is a really great education platform where you can get, if you like to speak, get in front of a nice background and talk about the challenges your market's facing. I think webinars are really great. Again, education of maybe bring a customer on board to talk about, I used to be in Excel. Now I found this product and solution and I'm seeing all these results. So you're building that community and you're educating them. It's going to be harder to do Google ads if they're not having high intent searching for you, because they're not at that place in the sale. Like high intent is actually quite mature in the funnel, but what you're going to need to start higher up on the funnel on that higher level awareness piece. So that would be my advice, is to figure out where you are in the maturity curve of where your customers are coming to you. And if they are searching for you, obviously those Facebook, LinkedIn ads, Google ads, where there are keywords, otherwise you're going to spend a lot of money on those platforms. And I've done it. I've definitely wasted a lot of money trying to go after keywords that no one's spending on. So
we talked it actually before this event today, that there are some older industries like construction, building connected, what you used to work for, that you kind of face the same problem, that those older guys, they are not in LinkedIn, that you can't actually get them there. How did you solve it? That what's left? That okay, I can't do Google, I can't do LinkedIn. What now?
Yeah, we did a lot of events. And so virtual events are a great option, but people know each other. So we would educate our and our founder had Dustin Devan had a big background in construction. He worked at construction companies, so he had a network. And so what we would do is we would throw happy hours in different cities. So you have to do a virtual version right now, but we would just educate people like, hey, you're spending a lot of money organizing your bids on a spreadsheet or printing things out, faxing things to your subcontractors. What a waste of time. Take your business to the cloud. But we did it in a very relationship oriented. It's a very relationship oriented business. So I would say wherever your target market hangs out, whether they go to a conference or there's industry events that are happening online, or if you can create some of those moments and events yourself with your company, you want to gather them and you want to sort of spread the knowledge in that way. I do think if you're taking an industry that's not been in the cloud, it's a change management conversation of how to modernize. And if you're selling to a cloud native business or an enterprise that is already has modernized their processes, it's going to be a different sale. For us, it was very DIY, like go talk to people, go be in person.
Well, you mentioned this change management talk, that if the industry is not ready, or it's like you have to make a muscle big changes. I agree with you that it's totally kind of different, like logic and how to do it. What's your like 5 tips how to do it, or how it's different from selling the new stuff, but there is not so much change management involved?
Sure. So working for a business that has replaced faxes and Excel, you have to find the most change ready people within an organization. That's your job. Find the people who are already. So for instance, with subcontractors, the older generation will never switch. They're just set in their ways, and that's okay. But their sons and their kids and their next generation, they're already digital native, so that it's not as difficult of a conversation. So it's actually counterintuitive, but you might actually go to someone less senior in order to help get them on board. And part of the above the line, below the line sale is that business leader. It might be the CEO who's writing that check or who's signing that contract, but you need their junior partner who's going to do the implementation, who's going to be in your platform all day to really get what you're doing. So counterintuitively, deal with your ego and go to the more junior person who might be more ready. It's not always the more junior person, but find out who it is who's going to be ready for that change. Yeah.
That's a good example. Let's take it that let's say that I'm discovering this market in Germany. So I go to have like I get to the calls through my network to older generation CEOs who are used with Excel, and they just learned it like, I don't know, 2 years ago or 5 years ago, and they are now comfortable with email and so forth. But anything beyond that, it's like rocket science for them. And how do I, from there, I have a meeting with CEO, like who is an old timer. How do I like get from there? Okay, this must be a wrong target. How do I like dig down to find in a company the junior guy, or maybe it is totally wrong market, that it's nothing wrong with the guy. It's just my product doesn't fit. How do I make the difference that it's a
Sure.
wrong persona I'm trying to sell versus I'm on a wrong market?
Yeah, we have to ask questions. You have to
Mm.
say, who in your organization could help us make this successful? And how important is it that your organization solves this problem? Do they agree that it's a problem? Do they agree that they need to solve it urgently, that the timing is there? So those are all things you have to set up. And then I think, in terms of the sales cycle, every industry's sales cycle is a bit different. Understand, again, the seasonality, but also the average time to sale. So if it takes 6 months, expect that. Expect that you're going to have one conversation with a CEO, and then he or she will introduce to 6 other people on the team who are involved in the decision, and creating those resources, getting your technical team on board, maybe one of your engineers to explain things. That's going to be part of your deal. I'd say the next part of your question too, of like, how do we accelerate? If you've identified within an organization that this person is the key influencer, getting your influencers to be your advocates and your champions is going to be a huge asset. And I think everyone who you're selling to has a career, right? They care about their career growth. If you can make them look like career rock stars to be promoted, that's a huge win for a startup. And one other point I will say, and this is something I think a lot of early stage startups that sell to the enterprise get wrong, is remembering if you're not selling a transactional sale, meaning a self-serve model where people are coming in, you've built your documentation, they've got it all online, you're going to have to do a significant level of customer success. And so I'd say investing early in customer success is actually a marketing opportunity, where just as marketing drives customer success, if you're helping people, your customers, be successful and creating those advocates early and often, they're much less likely to churn, and they're more likely to refer you. And referrals are a really, really great channel that are absolutely a marketing channel. So figuring out ways to incentivize your customers to talk to friends, to bring you new business, those are some of the best deals we've ever had. I'd say at my company currently, a good, I don't know the percentage off the top of my head, we get a lot of people who leave their job, go to a new company, and bring us with them because we've proven the ROI. Like, oh, I can't do my job without this data. I wouldn't want to do my job without this data. So figure out how to create those relationships within your customers, where, okay, maybe this person leaves this one account in Germany, but then they go to another account in Germany, another company in Germany, and that can be a really easy sale, easy conversation.
That's very nice. Are there any other ways how to incentivize the customers to talk about your, like, this is something like we pray that we'll do it, but this is not direct, or it's outside our control. If you say incentivize customers, it sounded like you have some things in your sleeve, but some tricks of trade.
Sure. I mean, I think first of all, asking, you can't expect them to read your mind. Like, hey, if you know of any other companies that you think would be a great fit for us, we'd love to take you out to dinner, or maybe knock off 15% of your next deal, or whatever it is that you can make happen. Because we really appreciate that. Like, we're a small startup. You can kind of tell them, be vulnerable. Like, hey, we're a small growing company. We really wanted to, do a great work. And we think that more companies like you should be our customers. So how can you help us? Like, get them on board. I also think things like case studies, events, webinars, anything you can do to make your customers look, build their ego. And so the way I like to think about this is, so our current company, we sell to a lot of CMOs. Now, as a marketing leader myself, right, we want to build our reputation. We want to be known in the industry, or, have that legacy in our career. So we have a podcast. And so we bring on these, our customers and our target market to talk about themselves, talk about how great they are, talk about all the great work they're doing. And by the way, it is great work and it is really interesting, but we're building them up within our industry. And at the same time, people are building awareness about our company and our solution. So if you can align your success to your individual, influencers' careers, wow, then they will absolutely talk about you, because it's not just, oh, here's our solution. It's, I'm able to be an amazing person in this role because of this solution. And if you can give them an award or put them in front of other people as a leader, that's very motivating. And again, we're human. We want to be seen as leaders. We want to be seen as making the right decision. No one wants to buy software and then get fired. Like that is not what we want. And at the enterprise, unfortunately, that's the risk. If you buy the wrong software, you can get fired. And so actually doing nothing in some ways is better, because then you won't get fired.
No risk,
so, yeah. So reduce the risk and then increase the reward. And there's a lot of strategies and channels for doing that, but I would say that's the motivating principle.
Yeah, I just remembered when you talked that people like to build their brand and to be known in the industry. There is a startup, Finnish startup, React and Share. And what they're marketing, they have is actually that when a sales can't can't get the contact with their target, it's like information officers or their customer profile. If they can't get the communication manager, if they can't get it, they give a contact to the marketing, and the marketing approaches them that, hey, we have this blog, or we are doing these interviews with fascinating industry experts about different topics in communication, and would you be like to be featured? And when they have had this feature interview and had a blog post up there, and it's broadcasted and promoted, then they give it to a sales back at, hey guys, by the way, we have this tool. Would you like to talk with our sales guys about this tool, how it can be even better manager of communications? So yeah, it actually works. But Stephen has written here 3 questions. So first is about pricing. That if yes, it's nice that we assume that the annual contract is 20K, but what if I'm selling something where I can't like calculate costs? It's like a tool that it might save some time, but and I don't know the pricing of a competitor, so there's no like freely available data. What's your suggestion? What should I do?
I don't know if you're going to like this answer, Stephen. Find out what your customers are spending with your competitors. Like, get that intel. Ask them.
Are they willing to tell, or how to ask it? They will say, no, I tell you only if you tell how much it costs you, or what's your price. Then I tell you what my competitor is.
Sure. So there's 2 things I like to think of. What is this problem worth to you? If you solved it, what's the upside? But also what's the risk? And again, it depends on whether you're selling something that's more of a vitamin or a painkiller. Are you selling something like, for us, we have an ROI calculator where we can say, we'll generate this many millions of dollars of revenue for your business if you use our data, based on what we've seen with other customers. For you, it might be cost efficiency, or we're able to reduce this many millions of dollars in wasted spend. Like, getting it to numbers is really important. But that being said, if you don't know what your price, pricing is a story, right? And this is the marketing part of pricing. If you're selling something that's very robust to the enterprise, actually, in some ways, I see startups hurting themselves. And I actually worked with a company based in Denver, Colorado, that was selling to enterprises, and they were selling for actually $10,000 a year, and realized that they would be much more successful selling at $50,000 a year because their customers were used to spending that. And it made them think that the platform was less robust if they didn't charge that, which sounds nuts. Like, why would the company want to spend that much more? But there's a lot of psychology, and Dan Ariely is a great resource in pricing. He's written some really great pieces, and a lot of the thinking around pricing is you want to be positioned in a certain value category. If you're $100 a month credit or €100 a month credit card swipe, that's a story. It's easy, it's frictionless, anyone can get started. If you're €100,000 a year, that's a very different story, and it's a very different level of expectation. So the other side to that is, you have to be careful. If you're selling a very high ASP product or service to the enterprise, they're going to expect a certain level of white glove experience. And you can't just be you have to, I don't want to say hide that you're a startup, but you have to mature in a lot of ways that you have to be ready for. So just be aware of that. The way that you communicate, the way that you they expect to be taken out to dinner, and they expect to have implementation teams. And if you don't have those things, just know that they're going to want them. But yeah, I hope that's helpful. Were there other parts to that question, or?
I would just add to a pricing that one thing I found easier for people is to give them ballparks. They don't want to give you exact price. But is it like more like, is it like €1,000 per month, or 5,000, or 10,000, or what we're talking about? What's a ballpark? And then you get, and they say, it's more like something between 1,000 and 5,000. They don't tell you it's like 4,500 or whatnot, but at least you get some ballpark what we're talking about. That's
and you can sometimes sell to multiple markets. This is also important. Like, you can have that enterprise solution and potentially eventually go down market. That's a conversation that you have to have with your board, with your team, because you're going to have to create a lot of different resources for self-serve. However, just where you're selling today is really where to focus on, and knowing that you might potentially go to a different sale. And I think it's important to share that, because you might have a product or service that provides value at different levels of different tiers. But if you're trying to sell to all the tiers, it's going to be really hard. And so we've had to make that decision where if we, let's say, had a freemium model and sold an enterprise product, wow, we're doing a lot of support for freemium that may not be worth it. And the enterprise customers have all these other expectations. So I've seen that happen where startups try to go down market too soon, or try to go up market without really building out that muscle. So prioritize and focus to the degree you're able before you scale.
And the second question is about email versus LinkedIn. That if you do a direct LinkedIn reach out, and should you start with a casual chat, like do it slow? They have some special term like relationship marketing for that. Or you should, when you got the contact in LinkedIn, is try to go to the email marketing, that you contact them over email, and it's more business-like approach. Or should you mix them, or how to test which works, or like what's your take on it?
Yeah, the answer is yes, both. Particularly for your market. So here's how I think about LinkedIn, and there's a lot of different things that you can do on LinkedIn. With their advertising isn't great. I will just say it's very expensive. You have to be really clear who you're selling to, and it's hard to target it to the person at a company. So you might spend a lot to target an org, but not the right people. So that's my caveat with LinkedIn. There's tools called ducks. They used to be called Duck Soup, but they're now called ducks. They can help you scale. The reason why LinkedIn is so powerful as a founder is you're able to be that human. They can see your background. They can see your profile, connecting to someone and saying, hey, we're building this business. I'd love to have a chat with you. Do you have time? Right? Like, schedule the meeting. Email is really great with tools like Outreach, other cadences where you can build nurture sequences and then build your database in your CRM, where it can connect to your marketing automation. And I'm using fancy terms, but really all of this, before you build out a platform, HubSpot, right? You can automate it where you have your list of contacts that you're building, and you can send them a new webinar you're doing. You can send them a white paper. You can send them that case study that we talked about. And then in terms of the sales meetings, Outreach is great for that cadence sequence of following up and continuing to automate the meeting scheduling. So those are a lot of programs I just mentioned, but I think to get at the tactical, LinkedIn is such a profound. Just a couple of weeks ago, we brought Oracle onto our team, or onto our customer base, by reconnecting with one of our founders' Oracle contacts. And we had already sold to the SMB team at Oracle, but selling to another team, because again, these large companies are actually many accounts within them, not just that one account that you land. So that founder reach out was still really powerful 6 years into our business. When you're first getting started, nothing's more powerful than them seeing you as a human. Ducks is a great way to automate doing that at scale, because if you want to hit 1,000 companies a week, it's a lot to do one-on-one. But if you're selling to a small target universe, you can absolutely send those manual messages, and it's worth your time. And then email, I think, is such a powerful channel. It's still the #1 channel for us. And what's so great about email is it can be very top of funnel, it can be awareness. Hey, here's this blog post we just wrote to help you understand something in your industry. Or it can be that very sales oriented, hey, I'd love to have a conversation. When can you talk next week? You already know about us. You can also do an outbound sequence where they don't know about you. And then you can say, look, these companies are getting this ROI from us. Would love to chat with you how we could help you at your company. And so that can be a very bottom of funnel initial reach out that's more outbound. So yeah, this is very short 2-minute how to set up your inbound and outbound, but I would say just do what works. Start with LinkedIn, start with those connections you have that are first degree, people who know you, people who maybe are second degree, know a mutual friend. If you can get an introduction from someone who knows the person, way more powerful, way less friction. And I'd say a lot of founders I talk to are afraid to market. They don't want to come off as too salesy. Not all, because a lot of founders like to sell, but there can, for a lot of product focused founders, it's, people will find us, people will know. I don't want to, go out there and do too much marketing before, I'd say get beyond that. You've got something awesome to share with the market. Don't be afraid to talk to people. And the worst that can happen is they say, not now, not now.
So Stephen has a third question about databases, but Stephen, could you open your mic and specify what did you mean? I didn't quite get it.
So yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. So yeah, what I meant, like, since Sarah, thank you so much for the information and answering to my crazy questions. But since you were kind of mentioning about the databases, and since, as I understand, your background is data, so do you know any like great databases for for finding some kind of fintechs or some kind of detailed information about them, or some emails? Because we are here in Solve, we're just kind of considering, like, should we just go through like our existing kind of company lists and kind of try to find them manually, or should we invest into some databases and try to automate some things?
To clarify your question, to make sure I understand it, are you saying, hey, we know our total addressable market, we're trying to figure out how to get their email addresses and how to identify the contacts at each company that's within our TAM? Can you help me understand what you're asking?
Yes, basically, whenever we're talking about fintechs, maybe there are some kind of lists like that we can, filter them out, like with some kind of segments where they're working, where they're located. And, essentially we would like to, of course, to find out the people that we can kind of reach out. I'm not sure, is there anything, something like that available in the market?
Yeah, I use Crunchbase. They're a good resource. If you're going after a certain market, you can search criteria of companies that are this many employees that are in this market, or this size, or maybe they went through, let's say, if you're selling to startups, or you're selling to, let's say you're selling to manufacturing companies with this many million in ARR. So you can segment with Crunchbase. Crunchbase Pro is pretty reasonably priced. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's I think it's like a few hundred euro a month. It's not wild. And then Clearbit is a tool that you can use to get more data on your target of email addresses, people who work there. There's a whole industry around buying lists and buying databases. It depends on your market. And so I would say, if you're looking for that, being clear about who your ICP is and what your TAM is, and within that, what markets you're segmenting, will help you be most efficient when you're doing that. Does that answer your question, or is that helpful, or you tell me?
Yeah, like we have been kind of discussing this whole Crunchbase, but for us, like it's the second thing that you mentioned, the Declarebit, finding out the emails, because finally we should find out the persons that we're going to be reaching out. But it would be great if there is some kind of, already we would know that who are the people that are working there, and then we can select like between the decision makers or whoever is the decision maker, and to get their emails finally. Of course, we can do it through the LinkedIn. That's why I asked, like, should we do it through the LinkedIn or email, or should they do it the both ways? So far, we have been doing the both ways. And of course, we're just kind of trying to figure out which works the best.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's also agencies. They're more expensive, but I just hired an agency at my company called Ignitium, and they have a tool to map the business buyers. But we have a very clear target account universe. So within the companies, like, we give them the list. We use our own data to make that list, and then we say, go find the buyers and give us their contact info. So that's part of what we're doing with this agency. You can explore it with them. I think they have a startup package, but it's probably still, I'm not sure if you'd be ready for it, but yeah, there's a few different ways to tackle this, but I think you're on the right track.
There's also this, FIMA from our portfolio is using a lead generation company. It's Belkin from Ukraine, if I'm correct. And their price range was something like €1,000 for 1,000 leads. And these are kind of qualified leads that they already have had some kind of contact with these 1,000 people, that you can then send an email that, based on our previous conversation we have, is, would you like to have a demo? That,
yeah. I've bought a lot of lists. I will just give one caveat. You have to be careful. When you buy a lot of lists, first of all, a lot of the data is going to be bad. It's going to bounce. It's going to be annoying. You're also going to get a lot of unsubscribes. So you have to deal with the spam flagging of, you want to make sure your email is being whitelisted. So there's a lot of considerations with that. I'd say the best list you can build is organic, and it takes time. It's hard work. It's totally fine to buy lists, particularly for outbound. But once you start to have contacts, once you're starting to provide that hand-raising intent, there's no substitute.
So we're 10 minutes over. Maido and Tanel, do you have any specific questions you want to ask from Sarah?
Thank you, Sarah, for this overview. I think they don't fit in half an hour.
We should do this again.
Yeah, absolutely. Like one of our challenges, what we have got is this, that our persona is what we are hunting is actually not the budget holder. And how to say, if you get the budget holder in the meeting, it doesn't turn the head. You can see that the light in behind the eyes don't shine, let's say it that way. But when you get the right persona who is doing that work, they are automatically clicked. So now building bridge between these two, how to do this? That user is different than actually this one who is actually holding the money.
Yes. That's super common. Yeah.
So what's your solution? How to, like, if the budget holder doesn't understand why the heck the user needs this?
Your job as a startup is to bring these two groups together and to be the glue, because every business buyer has different goals than the user. And the user is going to care a lot about all the buttons. When you change a feature, they're going to email your support team. The person who signs the contract is not going to do that, right? So I think part of it is helping the business buyer understand the ROI and the value. They don't, and I think a lot of startups get really caught in just focusing on the user. You're doing all this messaging to the user, and that's important. But you also need to elevate the business buyer to understand, again, because what's going to happen too is that person might cut the budget. That person, and it's frustrating because you're like, you're not in the platform all day. You don't even look at us and you're not even seeing it. So it's unfortunately your job to help them constantly think about ROI. And it sounds really simple, but you'd be surprised how many startups just focus on the users, even after they've gotten that signed contract. And I think also, when you're doing the business buyer conversations, you actually want to start with those, I think, in the sales cycle and in marketing. And then don't bring in your sales engineer to talk about features yet. And actually, I've seen a lot of deals go south. And frankly, our company had to learn this too. It's common where you're selling and you get really into the weeds of the specs too early. You start talking about the features. You start talking about all these things that you can do, all the different capabilities, how you compare to other solutions. But the business buyer just wants to hear, how is this going to make me look successful in my role? How's this going to help my business unit grow? How's this going to meet my number and hit my quota? So you have to live there a little too long. Yeah.
But for us has been the challenge to, how to say, like, if you take from marketing approach, then the message that clicks for example, we are in manufacturing space, and the persona we are trying to connect is engineer, and he's preparing drawings for the production. So messages that he will understand is less administrative work, easier drawing management, etc., etc. But the information that the CEO gets, who holds the money, is usually like better conversion rate in sales, less mistakes, less money wasted. So Now is question how to go with marketing. Do we market to the user, or we market to the person who is holding the money and making decision?
Yeah. Quick question. Is there a person between the CEO and the engineering org?
Usually not. Usually not. I'm the next person after the CEO.
Sure. So I wonder, just picking on manufacturing, do the CEOs of these manufacturing companies get to network with each other? Do they know each other? Are they all friends? Is it a small group?
Yeah, usually in our spectrum, yes, we are in metal project based. So this means that the projects are quite big, so they don't handle everything themselves. So they have to buy in sometimes some part of the job from a competitor to handle the big projects fast.
Yeah. So the answer is not that you just market to one or the other. You do need to market to both. You just need really different messaging. So that's the point I want to take home. So for our business, I'll take it outside of manufacturing for a minute. We sell, marketing leaders tend to have the budget for data. They're the ones spending 6 figures a year on this go-to-market program, which includes buying data. They have budget. But sales reps use our tool to prospect, and they are extraordinarily successful using it. And they're often the end users that marketing will buy the data, implement it, but then have our tool be for their BDRs, for their reps. And so what we've done is we've created content that helps reps figure out how to be really successful, but then gives them a really clear path to refer to their boss. Hey, we'd love to get 1,000 users at Salesforce. And we'll do this program to teach you how to use our tool better, but you got to bring your VP of marketing. You got to bring that person. So that's one set of messaging. But to the VPs of marketing at Salesforce, we create really high level reports showing the ROI of our data. And those are different channels. We find them on LinkedIn. We do events for them. We do direct mail where we'll ship things to them. But those are two different pieces of the customer. And if we messaged our reps with the CEO messaging, they would ignore us. And I imagine it's similar for you. What you're sending to the engineers is like, hey, I can help you be better at your job. I can help you scale faster and meet your KPIs. But then let's get a conversation with your CEO on the business side. And for CEOs, they're going to bring in their engineers. And actually, you want them to, because their engineers are going to say, hey, I need you to understand my world. So they're going to come in maybe on the second call or the third call, maybe even the first call. But I think navigating both of those at once, unfortunately, you're going to have to do it. Excited for you to get to do it. I'll frame it positively.
How to, like, this is a good example that, okay, I can send different messages in, like, I can get some guys from LinkedIn, some over email, but what about my company LinkedIn profile and the web profile? That if I have to, if I send the messages out to 2 different target groups, they come to the same page. And how to structure the value there so that they read the right stuff and ignore the wrong stuff.
Right.
Perfect question.
Thank you.
You have to think about them almost as different markets. This is how I would approach it. So for instance, on your website, you want that high level vision that goes to the CEO, right? Like improve the ROI of your organization in this way. There's a terrible tagline, but something like that. And then on your website, you can segment and have 4 engineers, 4 CEOs, 2 different pages, and you can have them self-select. I think in all of your marketing, you can be honest. You can say, we provide this value and we have a special way of talking to you. If you're an engineer, like come check out our engineering resources. If you're going to do a blog, make it really clear who it's for. If you're going to do a report, this is for, engineering leaders. This is for chief executives at these manufacturing companies. And so segment them, target them, make it clear it's for them, send them to a different landing page. I mean, it's easy to create different landing pages and the messaging is different. And then give them a way to get out of there. I mean, I think the worst thing is people don't realize that there's that other portal. Like you'll bring in engineers to a certain website, but if they accidentally land, let's say on the CEO portion and it doesn't speak to them, you want to then help them get back on track. They're like these ducklings. Your job in marketing is to get them in the right lane, get them to the watering hole or whatever ducks do. I don't know. Not to say that our customers are ducks, but we want to make sure that you're just at every step saying who you're talking to, being really clear and helping them self-identify. and creating those landing page experiences and those advertising experiences that speak to them.
Awesome. Tanel, do you have any specific questions to Sarah before we have to wrap it up?
Not really. I mean, I'm working in the B2C segment, and I just wanted to hear the insights from the B2B as this is something that we are preparing ourselves for. But yeah, it's rather the a side business that we have received some of the requests. But I mean, within this round, we are definitely going to exploit the B2C market.
So yeah, Tanel is targeting B2C.
Sorry, Donald. I realize this talk is not for you, but hopefully you had fun seeing your friends' names on the screen.
Sarah,
B2C marketing is all about product marketing. Like you're just talking about your product the whole time. So good luck. What are you gonna say?
I mean, in the end, it's if you have so much product, like all the images of the product, it really feels like a background already. You just scroll over it because you have seen this kind of product. So it's really how to make it more personal or bring some human touch into it, because we have really, I mean, we started with only marketing the product there, and now we are feeling that it's it has lived its time, and now we should bring some human experience there, because if we just show the pictures of the product from every new angle, it doesn't work as well anymore.
Yeah, it's lessons learned that if measuring and testing that if do what works, and if it doesn't work anymore, figure out what works. But I think that also in B2B that sometimes like Remato, who is selling to construction companies with software, that they did a Facebook test in order to find out that what clicks, and they saw that actually in their industry the pictures still didn't convert as well as text messages, and with like either you had construction workers like doing something versus you had a mobile phone with some kind of report picture. So that this mobile phone with report picture worked better, but also just text without any pictures worked slightly better. So it's you have to test and see what works. It's sometimes counterintuitive.
Yes. I will say one thing about, I've sold to the construction industry. They hate being sold to. They want a human. They want someone who knows them and isn't some, I was a marketer in Silicon Valley. They don't want to hear from a marketer. They want to hear from someone else in the business. They want to feel like there's someone who gets them in their world. We found that plain text worked really well too. And we had these beautiful newsletters with images, and they were dynamic. And they're like, I'm being marketed to. I don't want to look at this. It was very humbling. It definitely knocked us down a few notches. They're like, but this is so beautiful. No.
I don't care. Text. Awesome example. Sarah, so we have talked about setting goals. That the purpose of marketing is to bring in, help you to get your sales goals, which means that marketing has to bring in leads of your ideal customer persona, and that you have to test different channels, use what you have, your if you have strengths in some industry or contacts or networks, use that, squeeze everything out of your best success cases, and incentivize them to spread in their network and get you the next ideal customers. And we talked about being very specific, identifying who has a budget and who is end user, and sending different messages to them. With LinkedIn and email, that both can work. You have to test out which way it works best, and If it's 6 months, the decisions take 6 months, when you just have to take it. But you can't force the companies to speed up their decision processes. But that's the way it is, and you can't change that behavior. Take it as given, and if they are used to budgeting decisions in November, then all your marketing and sales should be made taking that into account, that budgeting decisions happen then, and you have short window of doing something with this. We talked about Crunchbase and Clearbit, and whatever you need regarding the information about the customers, ask them regarding competitor pricing and so forth. That find customers who are willing to tell that information to you. And one way also that sometimes people who have left the previous employer, they are not afraid anymore to tell you everything for a dinner, how much stuff costed, and did they use it or not, or was it a bad place to work, or good place, or so forth. But ex-employees is also a good source of pricing information. Yeah, and in some cases like education, like events, and this is your prime channel for doing the marketing, especially if customers are not searching for, hey, I want to get rid of Excel. If they don't do it, then it's your job to create events and learning experiences that they can understand that there are options out there. Anything else you want to highlight, or which I didn't mention with my quick summary?
That was fantastic. I love that summary. It'd be great to talk for hours. I'd love to hopefully engage with this group again. Super excited by what you're doing. And I know that growing a company is really hard. So thanks for choosing to spend, more than an hour, whether you're here live or listening to the recording, talking through marketing. And I'll be rooting for you from on the sidelines. Keep up the great work.
Awesome. Yeah, and if any of those guys who listened here right now, or if they have some particular question, can they shoot you an email?
Please. Yes, I'd love that. Please feel free to share my contact info with the team.
Yeah, anybody interested, I can share a contact. So thank you very much, Sarah. It was awesome. I like your way, how you approach marketing, no bullshit approach. Well aligned with Rand Fishkin thinking of building a marketing flywheel, and using what works. That there is no like magic recipe that you have to do things in this way in startups. But test and try what works for you, and make marketing and sales work in sync.
Thank you, Kalev and Sarah. Have a best day.
You too. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.